Good morning, good morning. It's Make It Happen Monday. And for those who don't know me, I'm Cheryl Andrews. I'm the listening detective. And Make It Happen Mondays is all about what could stop you from making it happen. So we talk about stories, examples, models, etc. Anything that can help you get clarity of what you want and the confidence to make it happen. And today we're talking about when is it not a good idea to talk. So I'm going to share with you some stories and some strategies about listening if you are struggling because someone else is trying to get you to talk when you don't want to talk, or maybe you want to talk but you can't get someone to listen. So I'm going to talk about those two sort of scenarios, two sides of that coin today, and then we're going to finish, as always, on a Make It Happen Monday with the 3 questions to set you up for success this week, which will be: what would you like to have happen? How do you need to be? And what kind of resource and support you need? So we're going to be focusing a little bit more on that resource and support, because quite often in this modern day world where we are being asked, raising awareness about mental health, more and more people are being encouraged to speak up and say how they're feeling. However, here's the thing when it comes to speaking about how you're feeling. It's very easy for you to say, just tell me what's going on. But what if you're the listener and you don't like what you hear? How are you going to respond? So one of the reasons it's good to talk is because you can express your experience, your emotions, and when somebody listens to them without judgment and acknowledges them and witnesses them, bears witness to them, that in itself can be quite freeing. It can just mean that you're liberated and you can let go of it. If the other person asks questions and is curious about what you've got to, wants to know more about it, and they're asking you questions because they want to understand, rather than they're judging or they've got an influence about it, then it can also help you as the speaker get more clarity of what it is that you're talking about. However, if you have the courage to bare your soul and you talk about, you don't have any filters, you just speak freely about what you're doing, and the other person's response is, well, you don't want to be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing this, or they get really upset, or they get angry, or they just freeze because it's triggered something for them having to hear that, then often that can add and compound to the problem of having now had the courage to speak. You now have to deal with another level of emotion or experience because you're now having to be concerned about the person who is listening. And for some people that can be shame, it can be guilt. So in this world where we're talking very much about, it's important to talk, I think it's really, really important to recognise when it's not a good idea to talk. So either if you know that you're the person who's speaking and the other person is not the best person to talk to, they're not resourced, they're not in a position where they can listen, then it may not be a good idea for you to talk. And equally, if you're the person who's trying to get information from somebody, wants to understand how they're feeling and what's going on, then it may not be a good idea if you have not got the headspace, you don't have the time, or the skill or the ability to listen. And even if you have an emotional response to it, that you don't visually express that, or don't say anything and don't show it, you just simply listen from a place of curiosity. And I want to share a couple of stories from my experience. Good morning, whoever's with me this morning. Please say hello. It's always lovely to know I'm not on my own. We're just talking about when it's not a good idea to talk. My mum was somebody who absolutely said, I want you to have freedom of speech. She used to have this thing where we went around at the table and everybody talked about their day. And if I was going to say something, she used to say to me, "Oh, just say, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling, talk to me." But when I said it, you could see that she was really upset by it, or you could see that she was really angry or cross about it. And so if that happens too many times as a young person, I go, well, I'm being told it's good to talk, but actually going by the impact it's having on you, no, it's not. It's not a good idea because I don't want you to be upset with me. I don't want you to be angry or cross. And so I used to then not tell my mum, and so she used to get upset with me because she used to say I was sulking because I was like, she knew there was something wrong, but I didn't want to talk to her. And then she would ignore me for 2 or 3 days. I would, be sent to Coventry, as the expression used to be. And so I'd be silenced. I'd put into silence for 2 or 3 days because I wasn't speaking. So we can end up in this bind that, you want to talk because someone's telling you to talk, but then when you talk, they don't like what you say. And if you don't talk, they're getting a frustration. So if you can recognise that in your relationships, the starting point is to be really clear what's your purpose for talking yourself, and what's your purpose for asking someone to talk. What is it? Is it for the benefit of you or for the benefit of the other person? So when we're communicating, we're talking to satisfy somebody else's needs, then yes, we might tailor what we're saying to give them what they need to hear. But if you're being encouraged to talk so you feel better, so that you've got more clarity and confidence, then you're going to need a listener that's going to listen where you don't have to filter what you're saying. Equally, if you're asking someone to talk and you're telling them to talk, it's checking whether it's because, are you asking because you want them to feel better, or is it because hearing what's going on for them will make you feel better? You know, and it might be a bit of both if you're in a relationship with somebody, but sometimes the person who's processing the information, and I'm this kind of person, that if I'm going to be encouraged to externalize how I'm thinking and feeling, I absolutely need to know a few things. One, I need to know the other person is resourced to listen to it. Two, that once it's out, it will get forgotten, because if I'm expressing a moment in time how I'm thinking or feeling, I can guarantee that in a few seconds that feeling or emotion, or just because I've been able to express it, I will change how I feel. And it's not helpful for me if I say to somebody, well, that's how I felt 30 seconds ago, but it's not how I feel now, and they keep trying to help the person that was struggling 30 seconds ago, because actually, having talked about it, I've now changed how I feel. So it's thinking about what's the purpose of talking. So I want to give you another couple of examples of some clients I worked with a few years ago. When I very first trained in Clean Space, it's a great process for people who don't want to talk, because I worked with a client when I was training, actually. So the idea is you write down on a piece of paper what you'd like to have happen. You then place that piece of paper where it needs to be in order for you to reflect on it, think about it, work on it, whichever words resonate best with you. And then we ask the client to place themselves where they need to be in relation to that piece of paper with their outcome on it. And then we check it in things like, you know, the right high. And so this person was just giving me a nod. So every time she had insights, she would just nod to me. And we worked for about an hour together. And the process is find another space that knows something else, and I'm just pointing to the outcome. And then she'd find another space and say, what do you know here? And is there anything else you know here? And she wouldn't say a word. And by the end of the process, I just asked her, so think about what you know now compared with what you knew at the beginning, before the session. What are you noticing? And she was like, that was the first words that came out, trust the process. And so I have no idea as the facilitator what that person worked on, but what I do know is they got the insights that they needed, and I didn't need to hear the content of it. Another example was with mums and daughters a few years ago, it's 10 years ago now, when I very first started step-by-step listening. I was working with the mum initially because she was, you know, worried about one of her daughters, and we were looking at all the things she needed to be able to be resourced at her best to listen. And so she developed the skills to listen, she developed the skills to be manage her time more effectively, to manage some of the stress. They were moving house, she was getting married. There was a lot of change going on in her life, and that was affecting her ability, because she was also going through change, and she also needed to be listened to manage her own feelings in order to be present to listen to her daughters. And once things started going really well, and she was getting the hang of the listening skills, we decided to do a session with both her and her two daughters. And what actually happened is we did the Clean Space, and the youngest daughter was at the time coming home from school, and the minute you asked her a question, she would just burst into tears. She didn't have the language or the words for it. And when we did the session, the mum and the older daughter put their outcomes on a bit of paper, they placed them where they needed to be, and the young girl put hers on a piece of paper and placed it upside down so no one could see what was on it. And then they each had post-it notes, and they would go and find a space that knows something else about whatever that thing was they were working on. And the mum and the older daughter were verbalising what they were noticing in those spaces, and the young girl, I just said to her, if I just give me a nod if you know something, and you can write it on your post-it note and turn it over, but you don't need to tell me what it is. And so she was like doing this, and she was putting it down. She's only about, I think she's about 8 or 9, and she put it down, and we carried on for about 90 minutes or so, and then at the end I just checked in with the three of them and said, so what do you know now? And the mum said, well, I know that I need to listen to my daughters more, And the older sister said, I know I need to listen to my little sister a little bit more. And the little girl goes, and I know that if I don't speak, nobody will know what I'm thinking. But it took 90 minutes of not being made to talk, and just allowing her that time to process her own feelings, and to make sense of her own experience before she could find the language to do that work. I can think of another lady I worked with, a lady who was a singer who was on voice rest, so she had a session booked with us and she couldn't speak because she was I think it was 48 hours or 3 days where she was just not speaking in order to rest her voice for a concert, and performance. And so again, the same thing happens. Now, for me, what I'm learning with a lot of my clients is that sometimes just having somebody outside of me asking me the questions and giving me time to write the answers down is all that I need. And that's one of the things that we do at the Clarity and Confidence Retreat. So those of you who don't know about it, 19th of November, which is this Friday. But I run 6, I've got 6 planned for 2022 as well. But you can come for half day or a whole day at the Clarity and Confidence Retreats. We start the day by asking you what you'd like to have happen and how you need the session to be and what kind of resource and support you need. And we have things like paper and gluing and sticking and magazines and paints and all sorts of stuff, arts and crafty stuff, if you want those sort of things to do. Note paper, pens, that sort of stuff. And then we ask you, to find a space that knows something else about that. And we have the whole of the house available for you to go and find your own quiet space to reflect on whatever it is you want to reflect on. And then I come and ask you questions for 5 or 6 minutes. And if you want to talk, you talk. And if you don't want to talk, you don't have to talk. You can just be asked the questions like, what do you know here about that? And is there anything else about that? So if you don't want to verbalise what it is that's happening for you, you don't have to. And so lots of insights can be created from that. And so I often say to parents with teenagers, sometimes asking someone the question in the morning and just leaving the question with them and not insisting on having an answer straight away, because what I know as a clean coach is that some questions, the answer doesn't emerge immediately. So it might be initially I don't know, and it might be I don't know yet, because actually I need to go and look something up, I can't remember how that works, I need to go and read my diary again, I need to talk to somebody, I don't know yet. And sometimes it is I don't know if I trust you with my answer yet, or I don't know if I trust myself to say that out loud. There's lots of stuff goes on when you're asked a question, and you're trying to process or recall the information. And some people have to relive the experience to be able to recall what actually happens when it's not working, when it is working. So how we answer questions is very unique and very different to each one of us. And how long it takes you to answer a question will be unique to you. And it might simply be about how you recall information, how you learn, how you process. But equally, it can be as much to do with how much what you believe. Like if you are somebody who believes that if you say it out loud, it will happen. Or if you're somebody who believes that actually saying it out, if you don't say it out loud, it won't happen. So it could be just your beliefs around, if you talk about things, what's your belief and what happens when you talk. Or you might have some beliefs around, how you should answer questions or what's the right kind of question. So quite often I work with people who are very much people pleasers, and so they'll often be trying to find out what am I expecting as an answer. And the great thing about working with a clean coach is we don't have any expectation. The answer is the answer, because what I'm expecting, if I have an expectation, is for you to be you in all your gorgeousness. So if you have something you want to talk about that's not very pleasant, or it's not, it's not okay and it's not working, then that's absolutely fine. That's your answer. And if it's something you want, that's also okay. There is nothing that you can say that's not okay. It's more about whether it's working for you. So if you talking about something that doesn't work, that's really upsetting you, if by having someone to express it to and having it witnessed and honoured means that it's out and gone, then it works. If I ask you a question, given that what would you like to have, and you find talking about what you want and what is working, that creates a change of state for you, then that's also what works. My job isn't to say this is how you should or shouldn't do it. My job is to ask you questions so you can work out what works for you. And one of the main benefits that my clients find with going through the process is I'm wanting to help people understand what kind of listening they need, because in everyday life, generally speaking, we have a tendency to chat without really knowing the purpose. So we start speaking to our partners or our friends, and we might be venting or downloading, and all we want is to express our sheer frustration with whatever's gone on, and we want to let that frustration out and let it land in between us, and it to dissipate and go. But some friends get hold of it and then get equally frustrated with us, and then they might come back with a comment or a question, and before you know it, instead of it being just an opportunity to express and expel it, you're now having a heated discussion about something. Someone has taken something personally or got upset about it. But had we said before we started talking that actually I just need to be able to express how I'm feeling, and I don't need any questions, and I don't need this, I don't need that, then that would be great. Equally though, sometimes we don't know what we need until we get something back and we go, oh, that's not it. So one of the things I talk about in Manager Critic, I talk about the 8 different kinds of listening, and this is definitely something that helped with my husband. I know lots of people have said to me reading the book that it's really helped them with their partners, is that sometimes, mostly, if I'm talking to my husband, generally speaking, I'll be going, oh, that's really frustrating, and I just need to vent and express. And his natural disposition for listening is, mm-hmm. And so he'll listen to it and he'll honour it, and then that's it. And then I go, then when in that silentness, that quietness, that's when I sort of buck myself up, if you like, and go, right, okay, well, I'm frustrated, what would I like to have happen? And I get off and do something. But sometimes there is so much going on, I've got so much emotion going on, that I actually need to feel supported. And so one of the things that we have an agreement with as a couple is that if I'm talking for quite a long time, like 5 or 6 minutes, about something that's not working, what's really useful is if Mark says to me, well, given that, what would you like to have happen? Or, and when all of that isn't working, what is working? Because if I just left in that venting state, instead of feeling better at the end of it, I just feel exasperated. I just feel exhausted. It just takes huge amounts of energy just going over and over and over all the things that are annoying me and frustrating, blah, blah, blah. And I just feel more and more alone when there's not a shared experience. And so what we've worked out is that if he asks me, what would you like to happen and what's working, that can be really helpful. Now, if what I actually need is for someone to really hear the way that I'm speaking, the words I'm repeating, the patterns, the process within my narrative, then my husband is not the best person to do that with. He doesn't have the inclination or the desire or to want to track those words. And that's when I will work with my coach. And I have a number of different coaches, and some are better at tracking different things. And I work with different people for different reasons. So I actually, knowing that some people their question will be better because their pitch, their voice, their tone and their pace, knowing that they have their biases and what they're drawn to and what they're going to track, all of those things impact who is the best person to listen to you. And whilst we sometimes don't know what we need until we've spoken, at least if you start paying attention to what you need in terms of resource and support, you can also pay attention to who in your network currently is able to help you with that kind of listening, so that when you speak and that gorgeous human being, just being their gorgeousness, responds in a way that doesn't work for you, you can either let them know what you need, and find out whether they are in a position or they have the inclination or the desire to want to be that kind of listener. And if they don't, at least you then have a choice. You can go and find the person that's the best person for you to talk to. And sometimes we do need people that are completely outside our circle of friends, outside our our circle of work people, so that when we express it, it gets left there, and it's not something that goes back into your everyday conversations. It's not something you know that they know, because actually that you've left that with someone confidentially, and that will be where it will be. So I hope you found today's video useful. As always, it is Make It Happen Monday, which I didn't even do my ticker tapes. There it is. So we're going to finish with the 3 questions. And I want you to think about this week. What would you like to have happen? And maybe, we can do it in context of the talking. Do you need to be talking to somebody? And if so, what's your purpose? Is it in terms of you'd like to have more quiet time? I'm definitely realising for me that having some quiet time to reflect and just listening to myself means I can process a huge amount of it. But ultimately, if I've got something that's really hurt me, I'm an external processor, so I do need to talk to somebody it's much faster and much more effective if I talk to somebody when it's something that's really painful. So I want you to think about this week, what would you like to have happen? I'd love to know your comments if you want to share them. Think about, in order for you to have that, how do you need to be? What kind of you is that you? That you is like what? So how do you need to be? And then the question we're really focusing on today is, in order for you to be like that, what kind of resource and support might you need? So thinking about the listening, thinking about the questions, think about the feedback. When you speak, what is it you'd like to have happen? And if you're the one that's asking the questions, really be aware of, what's your purpose for asking those questions, and have you communicated that to the person? Do they know that you're asking questions because you love them and you understand them, and that whatever they say will be okay? And if you're not in a position where anything they say is okay, then I do really believe we need to be thinking carefully about asking those questions, because we have to make it psychologically safe for each other to be able to express ourselves fully, and to really be able to know that though whatever is said is often temporary and transient, it's not permanent, but some people can hold on to what's said as though it's like a permanent thing, whereas it was just a moment in time that's passed. And if you can't listen and then let it go, then it's probably going to be more damaging for your relationships than if they hadn't spoken at all. So with that on note, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, any feedback. So go through the questions quickly to finish again. So what would you like to have happen? How do you need to be? And what kind of resource and support you need? If you do need any help, you know where I am, and I'd be love to talk to you. I've got Loretta. Thank you, Shirley. If I knew what I would like, I'd be in a better place. Well, you know where I am, Loretta, and we have got the retreat on Friday. And sometimes I know we've worked online together. Sometimes we just physically need to hear it, and sometimes we need to be in a different space. And I truly believe that you do know what you need. It's just having the right environment or the conditions for you to really hear that wisdom that's within you, and that through teasing it out bit by bit and asking the questions or being asked the questions, and having somebody that's so sometimes, for example, and I hope those are watching this after it's finished now, I just want to share this with you, Loretta, that sometimes the actual you are saying what you need and what you want, but you're not hearing it. And when you work with a clean facilitator, we repeat back your words exactly. And then when you say, well, I don't know what I mean, we will remember what you said you wanted. And so we can go back and repeat that back to you again, so you can hear it again. And sometimes to remember things and to hear things, we have to hear them several times. And so the repetitive nature of clean means that you get to hear some of that information again and again. Hope that's useful. I will tag you, Loretta, because I think you've logged off now. And I will speak to you soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.